West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Donald Trump won the election in 2016, and they let him fill that seat that they had held open for a year so as to deny President Obama the right to fill it. That was how Neil Gorsuch got his seat. Then Trump got to replace Anthony Kennedy, one of the 5 justices who had voted to strike down that restrictive Texas anti-abortion law. Why'd he retire when he retired? Then, in the final months of Trump's presidency, he replaced another one of those 5 justices, filling the seat of the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the one who had written that laws like the one in Texas cannot survive judicial inspection. And as Donald Trump proceeded to fill the Supreme Court with extremely conservative anti-abortion justices, after he had explicitly promised that he would only appoint justices who would overturn Roe versus Wade, abortion providers and activists and even just concerned observers could see what was happening, right? People were raising the alarm that Roe versus Wade was in imminent danger, that the right to legal abortion in this country really was coming under existential threat. And some people didn't believe it, or they said they didn't believe it. Republican senators like Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski said they were quite sure, they were convinced that all these Trump nominees to the Supreme Court certainly recognized Roe versus Wade as settled precedent. They would never mess with that. Let's not be melodramatic. Legal abortion is safe in this country in a permanent way. Well, here we are. If you ever wondered where you'd be and what you'd be doing and what it would be like for you when Roe versus Wade came to an end in America and abortion started to be banned in America, well, wherever you were today and whatever you were doing today and whatever it was like for you today, that's your answer.
I'd like to take a moment to share with you all what the final hours of legal abortion care looked like in Texas last night. Whole Women's Health had staff and physicians providing abortions in Texas until 11:56 is the time we finished our last abortion in Fort Worth last night. Our waiting rooms were filled with patients and their loved ones in all 4 of our clinics yesterday. We had a physician who has worked with us for decades in tears as he tried to complete the abortions for all the folks who were waiting in our Fort Worth waiting room. Marva Sadler, who's the plaintiff in this case and who was our director of clinical services in Texas, was on site, also in Fort Worth, working with our physician to see every single patient. She called me at 10 p.m. with 27 patients left in the waiting room. And both she and the doctor were crying and just asking me, what can we do? How can we be sure we can see all these folks? Keep in mind the anti-abortion protesters were outside this entire time, from the moment we opened at 8 until we closed at midnight. And once it got dark, they got giant shining lights and shined the lights on the parking lot. We were under surveillance. This is not abstract. This is real for our team.
Amy Hagstrom Miller of Whole Women's Health describing what she called the final hours of legal abortion care in Texas as of last night. They provided services to patients up until 11:56 p.m. before the law went into effect at midnight. Because as of midnight last night, Roe versus Wade is now a dead letter. It's inoperable in the state of Texas, at least. The law in effect in Texas right now bans abortion after about 6 weeks. Most women do not even know they are pregnant before 6 weeks. Something like 85 to 90% of abortions take place after 6 weeks. So this Texas law in effect outlaws 85 to 90% of abortions. There's no exception for rape or incest. And I know you've probably seen that today in reading or seeing the news about this, but what that means is a stark thing. It means a woman who is forcibly impregnated by a rapist, that woman will be forced to bear the rapist's child against her will. See, because conservatives like small government and freedom. The thing that really sets this law apart, the thing that is actually designed to make it difficult to challenge in court, is the sort of dystopian innovation that maybe only the state of Texas could come up with, since they've been working for 20 years now on finding constitutional workarounds to make abortion expensive, unnecessarily dangerous, and unnecessarily hard to get. They created this weird vigilante system whereby anybody in the country, any random anti-abortion crusader, any nut anywhere, has standing automatically to sue anybody in Texas who abets a woman getting an abortion. They can use Texas courts to sue not only a doctor who does an abortion, but anybody who works in any capacity at a clinic where an abortion is provided, anybody who drives you to the clinic for your appointment, including a taxi driver or an Uber driver, a rape counselor who advises you on your options, a religious advisor, a priest, somebody in your faith who talks with you about your decision, anybody who loans you money for the procedure, somebody who gives you a place to sleep in town. In the town where your appointment is, if the clinic's far away from your home and you have to travel for it. I mean, the way the law is written, a random person anywhere in the country with no connection to your abortion and having shown no injury from you having had an abortion, that person can sue anybody who not only assisted, abetted you getting the abortion, they could even sue somebody for intending to help someone getting an abortion. Intent is enough. So what's that mean? If you think good thoughts about a woman's chance of getting an abortion, you're in the bullseye because you intend to maybe help her, even if you don't? That's the way this law is enforced. It's civil enforcement. They designed it this way to evade the federal court system, which would otherwise find that this was obviously unconstitutional under the protections of Roe versus Wade. But it doesn't just encourage people to hunt down women getting abortions and sue everybody around them. It also pays them to do it. If a person, again, any random person anywhere in the country brings one of these lawsuits and they win one of these lawsuits, again, could be against the Uber driver, the court in Texas will hit the person who was sued with a $10,000 penalty that they have to pay to the random person who sued them, plus that person's legal fees they have to pay. It turns every anti-abortion zealot into a bounty hunter. For them, it's a risk-free, get-rich-quick scheme for hunting women in Texas and anybody who dares help them. And if a doctor or a clinic employee is the person who gets sued, the state gets to use that as all the pretext they need to immediately shut that clinic down. When Amy Hagstrom Miller described those anti-abortion protesters shining bright lights into their clinic last night, describing her staff as being under surveillance, that's because as of midnight last night, anti-abortion protesters no longer have to settle for just protesting and intimidating people. They're empowered by the state of Texas now to seek out ostensible lawbreakers and take them to court and get paid $10 grand for it if they succeed and not have to pay anything if they don't. Today, the editorial board of the Austin American-Statesman warned that Texans should be freaked out by this law, regardless of their views on abortion. The American-Statesman writing, quote, "The intimidation is the point. Facing the prospect of costly and endless litigation, abortion providers and others who help women with this difficult decision will likely stand down, making abortion inaccessible for about 85% of the women seeking care. While abortion foes may be just fine with that outcome, we should all worry about the legal blueprint that gets us here. Unable to outlaw a procedure that the courts have said is constitutionally protected, Texas lawmakers have instead blocked access to that procedure by encouraging people to sue each other into oblivion. The state's latest ban hands private citizens an extraordinary power to accomplish through extortion the shuttering of abortion services that lawmakers could not, under the Constitution, shut down themselves. Such a corruption of the law should unnerve every Texan.
It is Thursday, the 2nd of September of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, what's left of it, and a little bit of spice in your life. Well, between the devastating hurricanes ravaging the now eastern seaboard, and, the Gulf is going to get hit big time again, okay? They've already named a tropical storm, and it's coming in right after Ida. All right? I don't know what the name is, but they've already named it. And the devastation wrought once again in Texas. A fertilizer plant exploding, an unregulated fertilizer plant. Well, almost. Something a little bit more damaging in the bigger scheme of things. I know, a whole neighborhood with an elementary school just totally flattened by an exploding, unregulated fertilizer plant. But, that's pretty bad. But, look, turning every religious zealot, anti-abortion religious zealot, well, let's just call him Christo-fascist for short. Turn every single one of those into a bounty hunter. Vigilante justice. Well, that's one way to get around the Constitution, I guess, if you want to live in Nazi Germany. Jesus Christ. Why is this familiar? Because it is. Okay? It's how the judiciary in Germany was neutered and brought the Nazis to power. And I must say, it's also how the burgeoning judiciary in the new or former Soviet Union was neutered against the rule of law so that Putin could attain and retain power. All right. And I also have to say, I've never met a GOP Republican disaster capitalist yet that ever let a natural disaster like a pandemic go wasted. You can't waste that. This is the time to act. Let's ram as many things down their throat as possible. They'll never be able to do anything. We're in a pandemic. Let's get as many people sick as possible, confuse them, and do the end around. And they did. Oh, don't worry, Susan Collins said. Oh, no one will ever get rid of Roe v. Wade. Oh, yeah? You got some brown shirt stormtroopers doing it right now. And they started at midnight. Klieg lights. Why don't we just call them Klieg lights that illuminated that woman's health clinic in Texas as soon as the enabling acts were put into effect, became law. All right. Everything the Nazis did was legal. They just deemed it so. Precedent. We don't need no stinking precedent. They complained for decades about liberal activist judges while they were stacking every bit of the judiciary with Federalist Society goose-stepping goons, apparently. But I know that Driftglass can't call himself Driftglass on Twitter anymore, but I think that Driftglass, and I do concur, He would say, I told you so, and have been telling you so since before your mother was, maybe your mother was born. Or maybe, I haven't been saying it before mine because that's, a bit impossible. I know. In Texas, maybe it is. I guess. Save the zygote, starve the spoiled brat. How dare we feed those kids a lunch? I love that. And also, once again, let's be correct. We don't want to be ghoulish, all right? At 6 weeks, it is not a clump of cells. Please, just put things into the opponent's hands to be able to use. At 6 weeks, it is clumps of cells. Okay? I mean, we've got to be accurate here. All right? All right. That has much more or many more rights than the elementary school kid getting lunch. Feed that kid? What are you going to do? Let his brain develop and turn against us? I guess so. They fought against lead. Apparently we don't have any more leaded gasoline anywhere. It's all gone. They fought against that, knowing what lead does to the developing brain, let alone the developed brain. They fought against it. They were on the side of the damage that would be wrought by lead. And now they're fighting for the virus. And we're not some sort of bacteria from outer space, please. That's just proof right there. All right. Well, lizards from outer space, whatever it is, the bad parts are them. Obviously, look, they advocate destruction instead of, being neighbors. Oh, yeah, they always say they're good neighbors. Sure they do. All right. Well, we could get on and on and on about that, but once again, we do have a curated show for you. And since I feel a bit consumed with this Texas ruling, I don't know. What the hell is going on with that Supreme Court? Our snoozing sous chef wonders also. He's snoozing about it right now because he's paid to do so. And he gets room and board too. Boy, he's got a good deal. So, look, do we expand the court? Is that the solution? What type of impact will that have on the midterms? These are all calculations being made right now because it looks like, and I'm not going to quibble here, it looks like the Nazis are pretty much forcing our hand. Are we the Wehrmacht? Maybe. Or no, we're the Weimar. We're the Weimar Republic. That's it. Wehrmacht was a completely different thing. Probably, like the Luftwaffe, maybe. Fly away, little angel, fly away. So, these Nazis have forced our hand. We got to do something, and I don't think we're going to be able to impeach Kavanaugh. All right, I still want to know how Kennedy just up and decided to retire. Oh yeah, and they got pissed off on the way out. I mean, it's all on film. We don't know what they said, but it's all on film. What was his son doing at Deutsche Bank? Well, we know, but let's put it on record, and hopefully no one else will get killed in that sphere, because it seems like many have. Not just because they were laundering Russian money, but, they were also laundering Russian money. Dangerous proposition if you toe the wrong line, apparently. Sounds like Soviet times. Well, when you got KGB mobsters running your government, what are you going to do? Yeah, so I'm a little perturbed about the makeup of the Supreme Court. How was it that a mobster who was installed by a hostile foreign power run by a mobster, how is that person able to get 3 judges on the Supreme Court, justices on the Supreme Court? How is that possible? And impeached twice. I mean, just all of it. I don't understand why those 3 justices are not civil asset forfeitured out of there. And, we'll just hold them in escrow until we can figure out what the hell is going on. And then after we do, they have to petition to get them back. And, you just lose it in the files like they always do. Trust me. Trying to get your property back when you've been adjudicated that it was taken wrongly. Yeah. They don't make it easy. They don't just tell you to go to the property room and pick up your stuff. Nope. Takes a little bit more time, and it will cost you money. So, wow. All of us can be uterus vigilantes now. Wow. I don't want to. I think it's so disgusting. It's now turned up. All my jokes about the Stasi Quo are coming true. Jeez, joke about something, you might get bit by the ass. And I don't mean in the ass, but by an ass somewhere, taking ivermectin. Jeez, I can't. They're allowed to decide how the rest of us live, when all we want to do is have some equality, health care for all, people voting, because we are in a representative democracy. How about educating our kids and maybe keeping them safe? A little financial security for the elderly while they're elderly. Like before they're dead. And let's not precipitate their deaths because, they can't have the financial security that should be afforded them. And now I mean us. And how dare they? How dare they say that we are the tyrants for wanting that? Okay, enough of my pontificating. Usually I should pontificate on Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, and since it has sort of like, a pontificating meme already built in. We're in Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, so we have a whole different spicy level going on today. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? The White House officials are outlining plans to build and restore more than 2 million homes to improve housing affordability. Good. The White House has offered an ambitious $7.5 billion plan to expand electric vehicle charging to underserved areas. And the White House and the Treasury Department have partnered with a new internet site to help more Americans apply and receive the expanded child tax credit. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Israel promoted the military handler of former spy Jonathon Pollard. And a British man has been extradited to the U.S. to face movie piracy charges. How dare you? You're going to Guantanamo. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. By the way, check out her show. It's on Saturdays. Check it out. Across the page to the left near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could send us, the equivalent of a Whopper with cheese, the whole meal, Or you maybe even an espresso-type coffee drink. That's rather common currency, isn't it? If you can send those funds our way once a month, we pool what we have already in our pockets, stretch them beyond compare, even on the quantum level, because we leave no strange quark unstretched. And then we are able to pay our bills, fly under the radar, and continue this, packet of resistance against the greater powers. Apparently, even though they be small, they're rather dense, a lot of mass and inertia packed within. I don't know how that works on the quantum level, but it does. And anyway, their power is rather outsized, and they tend to be Nazis, and we have to stop them. And, keeping us doing what we do fulfills our civic duty as the founders originally intended, even before Scalia came up with the idea. Way before. If you would like to... thank you for your generosity, and thank you for being generous in the future, because, we pre-thank people. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and a hell of a whole lot more. Thanks, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links. Diary. It's not a story. You'll never make it a story. It's a diary. On Daily Codes, of course, about 10 minutes before showtime. And then get that linked up on Twitter and other social media platforms, and you know who they are. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. You know where they are because they're everywhere. You'll trip over them, especially if you're in the cloud. All right. Gunnar, the English Bulldog, our snoozing sous chef, you can tell he's working. I let him work. I had a listener actually say that it was endearing. I hope so. It can be rattling here. That's just the way it is. We love him with all our hearts. Okay, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, because we have a chef's table too. All right, I know a lot of times people get the amuse-bouche before. We do it afterwards because it's sort of like wind down time and, lift a little cognac maybe. Have an amuse-bouche. So save some room for that, and we always do. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe is out of the Associated Press by Josh Boak. White House officials are outlining plans to build and restore more than 2 million homes, a response to the volcanic rise in housing prices over the past year. Really? Volcanic? Millions of Americans are getting priced out of ownership or stuck spending the bulk of their income on rent. Is this something new? The S&P CoreLogic Case-Shiller 20-City Home Price Index climbed a record 19.1% in June from a year ago, as too few homes are available to buy, and low interest rates have enabled affluent buyers and real estate investors, you mean flippers, to pay more for homes. Oh my God, don't do that. The jump in prices is a threat to President Joe Biden's vision of centering the U.S. economy around the middle class, a group that has defined itself in large part through home ownership. Well, I don't know. Is that a dream or a nightmare? Americans' desire to own homes has also altered regional politics as suburbanites aligned with Democrats in 2020 to help give Joe Biden key victories in Arizona and Georgia, two states that have added population through new home construction. Got to stop that. The White House Council of Economic Advisors on Wednesday yesterday posted on its blog a detailed analysis of the affordability problem and the administration's plan to relieve it Its analysis notes that housing supply has fallen short of population growth for 4 decades. So many of the challenges predate the disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. There you go. It's not something new. It's been going on for decades. Researchers at the mortgage buyer Freddie Mac estimate that the United States is 3.8 million homes shy. Why didn't you just say 4 million? Damn them. What is needed to meet demand? The persistent shortage has meant that home prices are steadily increasing faster than incomes, making it harder for first-time buyers to save for down payments and keep them in rentals longer. Well, you know, I keep saying no one's accumulating generational wealth while collecting unemployment, so please. Nearly half of renters spend more than the recommended 30% of their incomes on housing. You know, that used to be 20. To increase home construction, Biden's economics team proposes a series of policy shifts. First, it intends to deliver 100,000 affordable housing units in over 3 years through a series of administrative changes. It will increase mortgage availability through Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae for manufactured houses and buildings with 2 to 4 units. The government also intends to make it easier for would-be owners and nonprofits to buy homes that fail to sell in foreclosure auctions, as well as expand outreach to local governments and nonprofits to buy federally held homes. The government also plans to increase the financing options for apartment buildings through tax credits, loans, and grants. Secondly, the Biden administration estimates that its economic agenda would lead to the construction and renovation of 2 million homes. This would include the use of federal subsidies and the low-income housing tax credit, a new tax credit for construction in economically vulnerable neighborhoods, and incentives to remove exclusionary zoning and land use policies by local and state governments that limit new construction. Oh, they're going to get rid of the no, not in my backyard laws? How dare you? How dare you? Not in my backyard. Still, the Post cautioned that a supply crunch could linger. There is no magic formula to quickly relieve the supply constraints, the statement said. Tina Bellin of Reuters brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Biden administration has an ambitious $7.5 billion plan to expand electric vehicle charging to underserved areas, but it must first overcome a host of obstacles that have discouraged private investment in more equitable charging networks. Well, that's a nice way of putting it. The experience of California, the U.S. state with the largest number of EVs and the most advanced charging infrastructure, shows how challenging it will be to achieve the goals in the $1 trillion infrastructure spending proposal Biden wants Congress to pass. California has poured more than $2 billion into a variety of electric vehicle incentive programs over the last years, which include policies to promote equity in distribution of chargers. The state has also generated more than $25 billion through its carbon credits trading program since 2012, a portion of which goes toward EV and charging projects. Nevertheless, California currently has less than 40% of the charging infrastructure needed to support projected EV growth by 2025. And that's coming up. Low-income areas in largely Black and Hispanic California neighborhoods continue to be significantly less likely to have access to public chargers. A February study by researchers at California's Humboldt State University found for charging site hosts, the economics are extremely challenging because of the relatively low adoption of EVs today. Well, if you make more, the price will come down now, wouldn't it? California's incentives for disadvantaged communities are gradually increasing. Application for the state's EV rebate program for low and middle income households have increased to a quarter so far this year, and around a third of funding for our popular state EV charging program is earmarked for disadvantaged communities. Josh Boak of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays. The government has collaborated on a new internet site to help more Americans apply for and receive the expanded child tax credit, a monthly payment of as much as $300 per child that was part of the coronavirus relief package. GetCTC.org was developed by Code for America in partnership with the White House and Treasury Department. The goal is to provide a straightforward online form that can be accessible via mobile phones for people who are not legally obligated to file taxes to apply for the tax credit because they don't earn enough money. Our research really shows the simpler you make the process, the more likely people are going to actually successfully make it through. David Neuville, Senior Program Director for Tax Benefits at Code for America, said in an interview. Based on a demonstration provided to the AP, it's possible for a parent to complete the form over the course of just 20 or 25 slides. The online form is also available in Spanish, not just English. Well, good. Well, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Sarah Vitak. Modern medicine and bacterial pathogens are in an arms race. We use antibiotics to keep them at bay, and then they adapt to become immune to those antibiotics, evolving into superbugs. The battle has been an asymmetric one. We just don't have that many options in the fight. Most of our antibiotics come from bacteria, the vast majority from a single genus, Streptomyces. And most antibiotics use the same handful of strategies to attack bacteria. But there's a reason that we only use a tiny fraction of the antibiotic chemicals that exist in nature.
This search for completely new substances was unsuccessful for the past 30 years. It's very difficult to make sure that we find an antibiotic, so a substance that's produced by microorganisms and that's toxic to other microorganisms, but that is not toxic to humans.
Miriam Rosenbaum is a professor of synthetic biotechnology at the Hans Noll Institute in Germany. But how, if they're so hard to find, do scientists know that we have only found a tiny fraction of the antibiotic substances that exist in nature?
We do know that because for the past 20 years, we were in this biological revolution of sequencing.
Researchers like Rosenbaum have taken that revolution underground, literally, like into the dirt.
And so with these environmental sequencing campaigns, we found out that actually the microbial world is much, much bigger than we thought it is. And this is how we know that we only have 5% in the lab, because we see, just looking at the DNA in the soil sample, we see there are 95% more. That where are they? We don't have the cells. You know? We can know more than their name or more than their existence there. We see what genes they have.
They don't have the cells because only about 1 to 15% of the species of bacteria in nature can currently be grown in the lab. It's like dusting a room for fingerprints, only to find that the place is totally covered, and in ones that you don't have IDs for, and also that the party's still going all around you, but you can't see the guests. What Rosenbaum can tell from the sequences is that these unseen bacteria do make more and different kinds of antibiotics. So, which bacteria are making them? And is it possible to keep them alive long enough to make the ID? Rosenbaum's answer? Microscopic bacterial pool parties.
Slowly, over a long time, went smaller and smaller, and now we are at these picoliter size droplets, so 200 picoliters. That's way smaller than a milliliter that you can still see, or a microliter that you can barely see. It's 1,000,000 times smaller than these microliters. And so these picoliter droplets now are the houses for these microorganisms.
So microscopic water houses.
And we put one cell in one of these droplets. So every cell gets their own house. And then, since these are so small, we can cultivate millions of these small droplets houses in one experiment. And so we take out of one soil sample of a few grams, we get millions of bacterial cells, and we put them all in their individual house. And then we see what grows.
The work was published in the journal eLife. And what they found is that they were able to grow a completely different set of bacteria than what would normally grow using traditional cell culturing techniques.
Typically, we put them either in a shake flask that's like the size of a hand, and then we have a few microbial cells in there that are basically lost in an ocean, or we put them on an agar plate on a solid medium, while in the environment they don't grow in this type of environment.
Giving them their own private space to grow separately also probably helps.
To take them out of the competition, to give them all a chance to actually grow up and to grow without competition and without somebody producing antibiotics and fighting against them and so on.
And the micro water houses are proving to be very flexible incubators. They're tiny, so millions can be grown together in one test tube, and they can be manipulated. So they can be put onto agar plates individually, giving the bacteria a better shot at growing there, or they can be used to do experiments with different conditions inside of each different droplet. But the goal has always been to turn them into tiny antibiotic factories.
So we took all the droplets that had growth in them, and now we added an indicator bacterium that has a light label, a fluorescence label. If these indicator bacteria are able to grow and they're added to the droplet, then we get a light signal, a green or red signal of this droplet.
So red or green light coming from a droplet means the wild bacteria isn't producing antibiotic. Because if it was, that would kill the indicator bacteria in the drop. The color of the light conveniently tells the researchers what type of bacteria is still alive. But a dark droplet, so one without any light coming from it, means that the wild bacteria is killing the indicator bacteria, stopping it from growing and stopping it from producing the light. So it must be producing an antibiotic then.
Yeah, so we can select all the dark droplets and then deposit them. That now we want to get these cultures. We want to get whoever is producing the antibiotic. And now we want to get those out of the droplet.
This means that they can screen millions of bacteria for antibiotic properties pretty quickly and easily. Inside these microscopic bacterial pool parties, humans might just find an upper hand in the arms race against the superbugs. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Sarah Vitek.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
As a writer, I get stuck every so often straining for the right words to tell my story. Over the years, though, I've learned when to quit tying myself into mental knots over sentence construction, instead stepping back and rethinking where my story is going. This process is essentially what millions of American working families are going through this year, as record numbers of them are shocking bosses, politicians, and economists by stepping back and declaring, "We quit." Most of the quits are tied to very real abuses that have become ingrained in our workplaces over the past couple of decades. Poverty paychecks, no health care, unpredictable schedules, no child care, understaffing, forced overtime, unsafe jobs, sexist and racist managers, tolerance of aggressively rude customers, and so awful much more. Specific grievances abound, but at the core of each is a deep, inherently destructive executive suite malignancy, disrespect. The corporate system has cheapened employees from valuable human assets worthy of being nurtured and advanced to a bookkeeping expense that must be steadily eliminated. It's not just about paychecks. It's about feeling valued, feeling that the hierarchy gives a damn about the people doing the work. Yet, corporate America is going out of its way to show that it doesn't care. And, of course, workers notice. So unionization is booming. Millions who were laid off by the pandemic are refusing to rush back to the same old grind, and now millions who have jobs are quitting. This is much more than an unusual unemployment stat. It's a sea change in people's attitude about work itself and life. This is Jim Hightower saying people are rethinking where their story is going and how they can take it in a better direction. Yes, nearly everyone will eventually return to work, but workers themselves have begun redefining the job and rebalancing it with life. Howdy-ho, folks. Thanks for tuning in and sharing my weekly commentaries. Also, please join me for a live web show I host every other Tuesday, the Hightower Lowdown Happy Hour at the Chattin' Cafe. You can join the action live online as I chat with grassroots leaders and progressive sparklies from around the country. Go to hightowerlowdown.org/chat-and-chew to find out about upcoming guests and watch past episodes. That's hightowerlowdown.org/chat-and-chew.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1910. That was the day the Protocol of Peace brought an end to the cloakmakers' strike in New York City. The garment industry had been rocked by the uprising of 20,000 months earlier. Young women had struck hundreds of small shops over pay, recognition, and working conditions. They won ILGWU recognition in all but a handful of shops. 60,000 cloakmakers in the city were inspired to walk out of the sweatshops that July. The mostly male strike force demanded shorter hours and increased pay, the closed shop, and more. Union membership soared, and most of the small shops caved. The larger manufacturers would not, however, and by the end of the summer, the Protocol of Peace was negotiated. Future Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis figured prominently in the negotiations. The protocol established higher wages, shorter hours, and overtime pay. It also guaranteed the union shop, elimination of contracting, and monitoring of piecework rates. Even more significant, workers won a union health center, a board of sanitary control, a board of grievances, and a board of arbitration. For the first time, garment workers had access to health care, a way to eliminate sweatshop conditions, and a way to mediate and resolve shop floor complaints. The price to be paid, however, was that workers would give up their most powerful leveraging tool, the right to strike. The agreement was lauded as a step forward for industrial democracy. But soon, many workers complained that the protocol failed to answer a number of shop floor issues. Grievances piled up, and workers were penalized when they attempted to strike to resolve their problems. The protocol would be scrapped for a return to militant strikes during the 1920s. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 51 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of 86, partly cloudy skies throughout the day, winds out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies overnight with the lows in the low 50, winds continuing out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And except for a few afternoon clouds, mainly sunny tomorrow, highs in the low 90s, winds out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon continue to spike. In fact, a protest held by a few hundred anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers at the largest hospital in the area, that, by the way, has no beds available because of all the COVID patients. They were basically on the side of the virus protesting. And we now have confirmed cases jumping to 185,080 people confirmed, and have increased our deceased total from 208 to 210 deceased, and probably more. Well, we have none rated under the pollen category. The air quality index is moderate at 79 parts per million. We continue to be in an air quality index warning because of wildfire smoke in the area. The daytime UV index is high at 7. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.01 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles. And relative humidity is at 78%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 65 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 78 and sunny. Rome is 83 and sunny. Kyiv is 58 and partly cloudy. Kabul is 78 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 80 and fair. Tokyo is 67 with heavy rain showers. Sydney, Australia is 63 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees and cloudy. And New York, New York is 70 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny, which means they're in the eye of the storm. And that is Weather from Around the World, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Staff at the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Israel is granting a promotion to the handler of an agent who spied on the United States more than 30 years after the episode, strained U.S.-Israel ties in less than a year after the handler was pardoned by former mobster President Donald Trump. Ex-Air Force officer AVM Sella, who handled former spy Jonathon Pollard, will be promoted to the rank of Brigadier General, the Army said in a statement yesterday, Wednesday. The Army Chief of Staff and Defense Minister Benny Gantz approved the move. Trump granted a full pardon to Sella on his final day in office earlier this year. Sella was the Israeli military's U.S.-based handler for Pollard, a former Navy intelligence analyst who sold military secrets to Israel while working at the Pentagon in the 80s. The Pollard case severely strained relations between Israel and the U.S. Sella enlisted Pollard to spy for Israel, then fled the United States after Pollard was arrested in 1985. Sella was charged in absentia on 3 espionage counts, but was not extradited to the U.S. from Israel. He was officially discharged from the service in 1992. Pollard spent 30 years in prison for spying for Israel. He was released on parole in 2015. In December of 2020, he emigrated to Israel and was welcomed on the tarmac by then Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Jonathan Stemple of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A British man has been extradited to the U.S. to face charges he was involved in a global piracy ring that distributed movies and television shows online before their scheduled release dates, causing major losses for production studios. George Briddy, age 51, pleaded not guilty to 3 conspiracy charges in federal court in Manhattan yesterday, Wednesday. Briddy, who has lived on the Isle of Wight in England, entered his plea one day after being extradited from Cyprus, where he had been arrested in August 2020. A lawyer for Britty did not immediately respond to a request for comment because when do they ever? Brady and 2 other men were charged over their work for the Sparks Group, which leaked movies and TV shows, including nearly every movie from major production studios, over nearly a decade by circumventing their copyright protections. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.